Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ADHD Aware. Just to let you know, for those of you who don't know who we are, ADHD Aware is based in Brighton and we're a national charity. And we are a charity that works for and with adults impacted by ADHD. We run 7 peer support sessions a month, both online and in person. And we also have a training arm, which runs neurodiversity training for employers in the workplace. And we also run these webinars. And tonight we are very lucky to have Michael with us, Michael Buehler. He is one of our volunteers, also a lecturer at SOAS, which is School of Oriental and Studies. And Michael will be talking, as we know, about GenAI and how we can use the software to support students with ADHD with organising their studies. So it will be, Michael will talk till about 8 o'clock and then we will have half an hour Q&A. And if you have a question, please put it in the chat and Paul and I will pick that up and then we'll come back to it at 8 o'clock. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Michael.
Well, thank you, Catherine and Paul, for the introduction. Now, as I already told Catherine and Paul about 5 minutes ago, I'm less presentable than I normally am, and that doesn't mean much. I have a terrible cold, so I hope I make it through this. The advantage of having an online workshop is that you're not at risk of getting infected, so it's all good, I hope. So as Catherine said, what I want to do today is to look at how generative artificial intelligence can be used by students or anyone actually who may be struggling with traditional ways of organizing information, such as people with ADHD. I'm a newbie to this field as well, both ADHD, but then also generative artificial intelligence, because the latter has just been around and become, an issue in higher education for the last 12 months or so. A couple of weeks ago, I gave a workshop on generative artificial intelligence overall to students at SOAS, and I'm very happy to share that link with you as well at the end. I wrote about a 120-page resource guide for people interested in how to use generative artificial intelligence in higher education. So you can find a lot of information and background detail there. We don't have the time to go into that today. So today we'll be specifically focusing on how to use generative artificial intelligence to basically organize and set up personal knowledge management systems for people with ADHD. So let me now start the presentation. So I'm going to share the PowerPoint presentation I have here. I hope you can see that. Can you see the presentation?
No, actually, we can see your Gmail at the moment.
Right, that's not what we want. Can you
see? Yes.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
All right. So, all right.
Yeah, spot on.
Let me just tell you what I want to do today. I want to provide you with a brief overview over the key concepts of generative artificial intelligence, because there are a lot of misunderstandings out there what this actually is. So we read all these news right now about how this technology will take over the world and enslave our children and do all sorts of terrible things. That's actually not what generative artificial intelligence does and can do. In fact, the capabilities of generative artificial intelligence are quite limited. I would say there's probably about 4 or 5 things it can do really well. And I come back to this in today's workshop. So I want to then explore practical applications with you. So we look at hands-on explorations of how to use these kind of platforms that have emerged that use that kind of technology to build personal knowledge management systems. And then hopefully we'll have some time for a critical discussion at the end of this. So what we won't do today is we won't really look into the ethical debates that are surrounding generative artificial intelligence. So the first time I actually came across this was when 2 years ago I wrote a report for the US government on how disinformation is used in Asia. And I came across this company, OpenAI, that was said to have created this application called GPT, where they basically provided a platform for people interested in spreading this information to create false and fake news within seconds. And that's the first time I made a mental note of this and then forgot about it. And 2 years later, in September 2023, it then really burst into the public consciousness with the release of GPT and ChatGPT as a subsequent model. So I don't want to talk about this. I also don't want to talk about all the copyright issues around it and other potential dangers. Again, that is something you could find in my resource guide that I will share at the end of this presentation. So what I want to do today is basically look at ADHD and the role of generative artificial intelligence in enhancing information organization. Sounds very fancy, but basically what it means is, what I think is happening or what is possible now is that people with ADHD that traditionally think differently than people that do not have ADHD can use these platforms now to organize information in ways that is probably more suited to the way they approach the world. I myself do not have ADHD, but from what I have read, I learned that basically people with ADHD struggle to prioritize and organize information. Orloff, an expert on ADHD, has called this a flat process information. So all information has exactly the same kind of value for people with ADHD. And so that's why very often they struggle to organize information in a traditional hierarchical fashion. That's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily good either. So it's basically neutral. It can, for instance, boost creativity, as many of you, of course, know, but it can also be a disadvantage in a world and in a society that values prioritization, especially at university, where you often are rewarded for being able to break down complex information quickly and prioritize what is actually important and what is just fluff, so to speak, or what is not important in an article, right? And so very often, therefore, then students with ADHD seem to be at a disadvantage. And so I feel that now these platforms that are using this technology can probably provide a way for students with ADHD or people with ADHD in general to organize information in a non-traditional kind of fashion. And so very often what we see with people with ADHD or students as well, I've seen this myself, that they engage in doom piling, which is sort of an attempt to organize information, right? And as many of you, of course, know, doom stands for didn't organize, only moved. So you end up with folders that are just full of information. So you hoard information. It's not organized whatsoever, right? And very often, of course, that extends to the physical world as well, where you then have, doom bags lying around a flat and whatnot. And so how can we now harness the information that you would find in maybe a doom pile? And so for that, we may want to look at what Amazon has done. And here, what is quite interesting is that Amazon actually has become extremely efficient in delivering products, not so much because the way its workers are actually organized, although that's frequently in the news, how little they actually getting paid and how hard they have to work. And that is certainly true. But a quantum leap was really made by Amazon when they abandoned traditional ways of organizing their warehouses and actually introduced a so-called chaotic storage system. And what is that? Basically, in Amazon warehouses, and that developed at around 2010 when Amazon moved into one-day shipping, so they had to ship out a lot of products within a short period of time. They basically said, we give up warehouses that order goods according to their characteristics, their size, or their features, and we basically store our items in our warehouses wherever there is space. And at the same time, we come up with a software that is identifying every single item in our warehouses within a fraction of a second. So we can withdraw and retrieve these products when someone orders them on Amazon. And based on that change in their warehouse logistics, it basically has boosted efficiency of Amazon warehouses. It reduces mix-up and speeds up retrieval. And so the delivery of Amazon products has greatly increased. And so what that means, and that basically was the idea, or my idea about how generative artificial intelligence could be used for people with ADHD, came when I read Amazon warehouses, that basically rather than fight disorganization, one could actually embrace disorganization and therefore become more efficient, because they basically don't spend time anymore in trying to organize information in a traditional hierarchical way that is not suited to someone who has ADHD. And so just to give you an idea, to visualize this, on the left-hand side, you see a traditional warehouse where items would be stored based on characteristics. So the carpets would all be in one shelf, and then the papers would be in another shelf. And on the left side, on the right side, you see an Amazon warehouse where things are basically just stored based on availability of space. How that looks in reality, you see here, that's a screenshot of an Amazon warehouse. It's richly just completely random. So you have teddy bears next to cleaning products, and then on the other side, you have actually food items. I found it a bit scary when I saw it, but that really is how actually Amazon warehouses are set up. And this is how it looks in reality. On the right-hand side, you see a worker. So for scale dimensions, so enormous warehouses that are completely chaotic. If you have 50 toothpastes in that warehouse, they're in 50 different locations. They're not all in the same location, right? And so what we then basically see is a similar kind of application with regard to general artificial intelligence and personal knowledge management systems. Now, before I get to that, I want to just briefly say something about generative artificial intelligence, the basics, because I think it's important to know that, because there's certain kind of qualifiers that come with using generative artificial intelligence, then one needs to be aware of these qualifiers and issues as one uses these products, right? So first, and again, I would point you to my resource guide. It's important to understand that generative artificial intelligence is not artificial general intelligence, which is basically human-like intelligence that is able to fulfill complex tasks, that is able to think, is sentient almost. Generative artificial intelligence is not that. It's in many ways a very advanced autocomplete program, right? You all know that from Google. If you type in a search, then it autocompletes that, or on your phone. And that is essentially what generative artificial intelligence is. So it's not like a human-like robot that can think. I very often tell my students it's a tool for experts rather than an expert tool. If you know what you're doing, if you know what you want, these are great tools, but they do not think for you, right? And so again, in terms of its historical context, they've been around for many years, but gained significant attention in early 2023 when ChatGPT was released, and basically people started to take note of this kind of technology. And ever since, literally thousands of tools have developed, and some of these tools basically try to help people organize information, and these are the tools that we're looking at today. So what is important here? Let me just show you the basic idea behind generative artificial intelligence, so-called large language models. Basically, generative artificial intelligence uses an enormous amount of information, text mostly, and then calculates probabilities for how words or so-called tokens relate to each other. And this is from the Financial Times website. You can go to this website and look at this yourself. I have this in the resource guide, a link there, but let me just briefly show you how that works. I'll go through this quickly. This is just a website here. So This is how these large language models are trained, and I come back to this in a second for why this is important. They basically take a sentence and break it down into tokens, into words, and then the word they are using now here to analyze is work, and they now go through millions and millions and millions of words and sentences and calculate what kind of words are very often used in conjunction with work, right? And that's what you see is happening here. And so they do this with literally right now, probably everything that is out there on the internet, as you may have read, right? They use Facebook entries and so on and so forth. And then they come up with a score, and basically orange words are very often used together with work, and blue words are very rarely used together with work. They come then up with a vector, or a so-called embedded vector, a model that basically shows what kind of words are very often used together with work, right? And you can see here that similar words like sea and ocean have similar kind of embeddings, right? The similar kind of words are used together with sea and ocean, football and soccer, I and we. And that's basically what large language models are doing. And so at the end of the day, and this is what we're getting to here, you can ignore all this, it comes up with a probability score, as you can see here on the top right. And so the Financial Times is, and what is now most likely the word that comes after a sentence like this. And so the dark red word, about, is most likely to follow a sentence like this after having analyzed millions and millions and millions of words and sentences like this. And this is the core idea, the core technology between generative artificial intelligence, and it's usually referred to as a large language model or an LLM. It simply calculates what is the likelihood, what is the probability that certain words follow other words, and then you come up with a conclusion. The Financial Times is a newspaper founded in 1888, is most likely a sentence that is correct based on probability scores used in other sentences, right? So this is how the technology works. Why is this important? Because it has an impact on the accuracy and the quality of generative artificial intelligence tools. The training data, for instance, is very often time sensitive. So ChatGPT-3, for instance, uses a knowledge database that goes until 2021. So all the sentences out there, all the information out there until 2021 was put into that model, which means it cannot answer anything that was put on the internet after 2021, right? And so that's a quality issue you need to be aware of if you use that model. And that's true for many other models as well. So they basically have a limited knowledge database, which then affects and introduces biases into the answers that we get from these models. So the bottom line is, don't believe everything these models tell you. Another issue is, of course, that a lot of these models also hallucinate, which basically means they make up stuff. So a lot of the things they say and pretend to be factually correct actually isn't, right? And very often, of course, now the problem is that so much new content is now already generated by generative artificial intelligence that new models are trained on generative artificial intelligence content. And if the quality of the old content is not that great, but new models are trained on that content, the quality of new models may actually go down, ironically, right? And so these are quality concerns and accuracy concerns we need to be aware of. Another issue that we need to be aware of is that we need to talk to these tools in a certain kind of fashion. And the term that is always used by people in this field is prompts. So how do you interact with these models, right? And they have become so popular because you can actually interact with them in a natural language conversation. However, it still depends very much on how you ask. So if Catherine would ask a model something about ADHD, and then I would ask the same model about ADHD, but I phrase my question differently, we would get different answers, right? And there's ways to extract information from these models that are more effective than others, right? And so if you put in a bad prompt, you will get a bad answer. Or if you put in a lazy prompt, you would get a lazy answer. So that's very often referred to as the garbage in, garbage out principle. So if you feed garbage into the model, you will very often get garbage out. And so very often what now has emerged are so-called prompt engineers or prompt libraries that are out there that basically teach how people should come up with prompts and how they should phrase their questions. I go into this in more detail in my resource guide, and you can read up on this yourself. However, here is what's important. And again, I'm just mentioning this because it shapes the way you will interact and the answers you will get with the tools I introduce in a second. So good prompts are specific. They use natural language. They assign a tool to the model. They say, act as if you were a student with ADHD and break down that article for me in 5 paragraphs. That would be a good prompt. Use do and don'ts, use examples, and specify the desired output. Let me just tell you about hallucinations. These are the lies that make up, and this is a language model called Gemini that is used by Google, which all of you that have a Gmail account have access to. This is the prompt at the bottom that I put in. Provide a list of 10 academic articles and books on whether natural resource extraction leads to political violence or not. That's what I'm interested in. So I put that in. It now spits out the 10 articles I have asked for. Looks very impressive. So here I am ready to write my essay. However, because I'm a political scientist, I know some of these authors, and I know that Terry Lynn Carl is actually an academic who specializes in Latin America. She doesn't write on the resource curse. So I'm getting suspicious. I now go to Google Scholar and type in that article, and I realize it doesn't exist at all. So Gemini has just made up this article. The academic exists. The article sounds quite plausible, but it actually doesn't exist. Now I'm getting more suspicious. I copy paste this book suggestion into Google Scholar, and I realize it also doesn't exist, right? And so 8 resources that are there are probably correct, but 2 of these resources are not. And if a student of mine now would use this as a bibliography of one of their essays, I would say, well, actually, you fell into the trap of hallucinating generative artificial intelligence models, right? So again, we need to be careful and fact check what these models tell us. So let's then go and look at how we can use these models to organize knowledge in a non-traditional fashion. And here, and then we finally come to these platforms, I just want to point out that traditional personal knowledge management systems, so PKM stands for Personal Knowledge Management, use hierarchical organization, which basically means folders and subfolders and files. You need to title every folder and give every file a unique name. Generative artificial intelligence now allows you to store information in non-traditional, random ways, very much like the Amazon warehouse. Every single personal knowledge management system consists of 4 dimensions. It consists of a way to capture information, to organize information, to distill information, and then to extract that information. So I tell my students, you first need to go to the library, then you need to get the books you want, you need to organize them, you need to read the books, you need to distill the content of these books, and then you need to write your essay, right? Capture, organize, distill, and express, the so-called code dimensions of every personal knowledge management system. And so I want to now go through these platforms that have used generative artificial intelligence to allow people to organize their knowledge in a non-traditional way by looking at these 4 dimensions. So let's first look at a platform that has emerged called Notebook LM, which has been developed by Google employees, Google staffers. Let's look at the capture dimension. So you go to the LM website, and again, if you have a Gmail account, you have free access to Notebook LM. You enter the platform, And you basically then see this interface here. I have already certain notebooks here. I now start a new notebook. And so how do I now capture information? How do I get information into this notebook? I can basically first title. I don't need to do that, but I just now give it a title. ADHD is the title of, or the name of my notebook. And I now go to my hard drive. I basically can upload PDF files, text files, and markdown files. I choose files pretty much like you upload an article or an attachment. And I have an article here, University Students with Attention Deficit Disorder, that I'm interested in. I upload this to my notebook. As you can see, I did not give it a title. I just dumped it in there. I also have this website here that I find interesting, long-term outcomes of students with ADHD. I add this to my sources. I scroll down and I add the website. I just copy paste the website in there, and it adds that to my knowledge database on the left-hand side. So I have two sources in there. I have another article I'm interested in, how digital use, media use affects ADHD. And again, I would just, to show you this one more time, add this website to my knowledge database by just copy pasting it into that database. Let's say I'm interested in an article, but I don't want to copy paste the entire article, but just certain paragraphs from that article. So let's say I would go to this article, what is ADHD? And the first two paragraphs interest me, so I can highlight these and then copy paste these two paragraphs and just then dump these two paragraphs into my knowledge database through the paste text function. So I have now created a knowledge database, and once I click insert, Notebook LM will create a large language model based on my sources that I have put in there. So not the internet, but only the sources I have in there. I can also upload Google Docs or Google Slides. And because I have only the sources I want in my notebook, it's called a grounded large language model, because it's grounded in the sources I put up there and not in anything else. I have a maximum of 50 sources I can upload. Each source can have about 500,000 words. So that means you can upload the equivalent of about 300 books into every single notebook. And then Notebook LM will create a large language model based on that knowledge database on the left-hand side. So I've shown you how to get information into that platform. That's the capture function. Now let's look at the organize function. And so this is where it becomes interesting. Remember, the point of this workshop today is to show you how, if you struggle with traditional ways of organizing information, can use these platforms to basically organize information in non-traditional ways. So far, we have simply uploaded information we are interested in onto our Notebook LM platform. We have not given it any title. We have not used any folders. We have just put it up there. And so if we now want to organize this, it actually does it for us. So if we then have these sources here on the left-hand side, we can click on individual sources, and you will see that Notebook LM has automatically assigned so-called key topics to all of these sources. So I can click and unclick these sources. As you can see, I can click on individual sources, and as you can see here, it has automatically come up with key topics or tags for the article without you having to do so. So that's a way of organizing, of self-organizing material that Notebook LM does for you, right? And so that's one way it organizes information. Another way to organize information is it automatically creates a notebook guide. It provides a summary of all the information in that notebook. So if I have 300 books in this notebook, it will summarize the content of all these 300 books here and come up with a text, what I can find if I use this notebook. So again, information is organized and distilled for you and tagged and key marked by Notebook LM. So that's the second dimension of a personal knowledge management system. So now we know how to capture, how to organize, and now where it really becomes magical is how to distill information. So now we want to extract information from the sources we have, right? And so here again, it's important you can engage with as many sources as you want. You can engage with all the sources here. You then would click on select all sources, or you can engage with just 2 sources or 1 sources, how many you want. So I have now activated all sources here. And as you can see at the bottom, it now says I'm interacting with 5 sources, right? So if I now start to enter prompts into that line, into that field at the bottom, it will interact with 5 sources. Now I've clicked on only 1. It will then interact with only that 1 source. But I can now go through natural language interaction and interact with these sources in a conversation. I basically can have a conversation with my PDF files, right? It also actually gives us suggestions of what we could ask. As you can see here at the top, it says, for instance, what are the limitations of the study that examined the association between high-frequency digital media use and ADHD? So let's say I'm interested in this. I can click on this, and then it starts a conversation where it now goes to that source that I do not know where it is, right? It's somewhere in my knowledge database, and it now comes up with an answer, what actually the limitations of the digital media use is on ADHD, right? If I'm interested in where I find that information, I click on that little number at the end of each paragraph, and it will jump automatically to the place in the article where that information is from, where Notebook LM has taken that information to generate that answer, right? So I can generate and extract information without having to know where that information is, without having to organize that information. If I like the answer, I can actually save that answer. I can give it a title. I don't need to. And add that to my knowledge database. So I can distill information and add it to my knowledge database and interrogate it later on. As you can see here, this is an article that has now been generated by artificial intelligence, an answer based on the knowledge database. Because it's been used by artificial intelligence, generated by artificial intelligence, I cannot change the text in that note. So you always know what has been generated by artificial intelligence, the notes that you cannot change, and the notes you write yourself, you can go and edit. I show you that in a second. But basically, that's the distill function of Notebook LM. So let's then go and look at the express function. So how do I now use this information to write an article, for instance? I can add a note. And as you can see, the title of that note now appears in green, which means this is stuff I write myself based on the information I have here. So initial thoughts and ideas about a workshop on ADHD, and I can now go and write information down in that box at the bottom. It's a normal word processor, and if I like what I have written here, I can save it and add it to my knowledge database. And the stuff I've written myself appears in green. The stuff that has been distilled by Notebook LM appears in blue. And again, as I said, none of this requires the organization of information in a traditional hierarchical way. You just dump it in there and start interacting with your resources. Let me then go to a second platform called Saner AI, which is a standalone platform. It's not attached to any big company. Let's go now through the features. Again, how do you capture information here? It's a little different from Notebook LM. It offers different features. That's why I want to introduce you to this kind of platform. So Saner AI, you log in. It claims it has been developed by people with ADHD to reduce distraction and overwhelm, as it says here. And so I go to the Add Note button on the left-hand side, similar to Notebook LM. And I basically then add notes and import material very much like what we've seen before. So I can import different kinds of formats, text formats, PDFs, markdowns, Obsidian markdown files, or websites as well, HTML website, and it actually connects with standard note-taking apps like Notion, Apple Notes you can put in there, Evernote, and there's no limit here. So you can literally, if you have 100,000 Apple Notes, you can upload all of them there, and it organizes it for you within seconds. So let me show you. I have these 2 articles on my hard drive about ADHD. I upload these into Saner AI. Takes a couple of seconds. It uploads them into the knowledge database. And again, it just saves them there. I've not given it a title. I have not organized it in any form or fashion. It's just there in a random kind of way. I can do this with thousands of sources if I want to. I can also use a web clipper. So NotebookLM doesn't have a web clipper. Saner AI does have a web clipper. So I basically have a website I'm interested in. Let's say a website from before, long-term outcomes of ADHD. I'm interested in saving this information, this website. I just use the web clipper. I go to the Chrome extension for Saner AI that you see at the top. I highlight the text I'm interested in. I click on right-click on the web extension Saner AI, create a new note, and it automatically then transfers that information into Saner AI. And if I now go back to Saner AI, the main platform, you will see that it shows up as an additional new note. I can also add my own thoughts here, as you can see here, to the web clippings I'm pulling into Saner AI. I can also give it a title. Again, this is not necessary whatsoever. You can do that if you want. You don't need to. You will find the information in any case. So let's go back to Saner AI and then basically see how that looks. I need to refresh the website so that it shows up there. But my knowledge database so far has 2 sources, the 2 articles I uploaded from my hard drive. And now if everything goes well, it should show 3 sources, which includes that website that I've just before clipped from the internet. And as you can see, it shows up here, the excerpt that I copy pasted from the internet. So this is how you get information into Saner AI. Let me show you that again. I go to, let's say, Attitude Magazine, which is a magazine about ADHD for people with ADHD. And again, clip that information into Saner AI. I give it a title, and then it shows up in my knowledge database. So capture is even easier than in NotebookLM because you can use web clipping functions and you can just upload the traditional way into Saner AI. So that's the capture, right? And so again, if I refresh this, I should now have 5 sources, and hopefully that now shows up, and absolutely it does. So I now have 2 web clippings here, Attitude Magazine clipping, excerpt from the Journal of Attention Deficit Disorder, and 2 PDF files that I have from my knowledge database. So that's now the start of a knowledge database, and I could do this again for hundreds and hundreds of sources, and I do not need to organize them in any form or fashion. So now let's look at how Saner allows me to organize, or how Saner organizes the material for me, right? So I pick a source or a note that I put in there. So let's say I'm interested in this PDF article I have uploaded. So you can see it has pulled the entire PDF article into the note as a screenshot, right? That as well. You can see the title is nonsensical because that was the title of the document that I uploaded. Doesn't matter. All the information is there. And what I can now do is I can basically click on autofill, and it will then create tags for me based on the information in the thing, right? So without having to think, so to speak, I can organize this information quite quickly. So I have the link here to the original source at the end of the the card, it always goes to the article where I have it from, so you don't need to worry to lose sources. I can click on autofill, and it automatically now, using generative artificial intelligence, comes up with tags, mental health, ADHD, that I can use to organize material. If I now click on ADHD, let's say I click on another article, I click on this one, I also now click on autofill, it will create another tag, ADHD. If later on, let's say I have 100 sources on ADHD, and I click on the tag ADHD, it will then show every single file with that tag ADHD. And so again, I do not need to organize this myself, it does it for me. Right? And so there's no hierarchy here, no folders. You don't need to give it any title. You dump it in there and then basically use these features. The tags show up here. If I now click on the ADHD tag, then all the articles and the sources with the ADHD tag show up here in my interface, right? And so again, a non-traditional way of organizing material. Let's now look at how Saner AI distills information. How do we extract information from the sources that we have uploaded? And here you can basically click on the sources, like with Notebook LM. You can define how many sources you want to interact with. Ideally, of course, you interact with all the sources in your notebook, but if you want to only interrogate one or two articles, you can just select these articles on the left-hand side and basically make sure that then only these two articles are used for the natural language model. You can also get rid of the left-hand side panel if you want to have less distraction. You can also click here whether you want to have deep thinking or not deep thinking, which means it takes a bit longer to interact with the sources. And then you can use two ways of interacting with your sources. The first one here is Sky, as Saner AI has called it. And Sky basically is a natural language model that allows you to interact with your sources in your knowledge database, right? Here are the notes. I define the notes I want to interact with, as I mentioned before. So I have a note here in a folder, again, not necessary, but I basically select all the notes I'm interested in and then confirm. And then I interact with these notes through a natural language prompt. Remember what I said about prompts, right? You now just ask a normal question, a natural language interaction question. What are the common themes across the nodes in my knowledge database? So find commonalities across these sources, right? And Sky now goes through all the sources that I have clicked and basically comes up with commonalities. What is showing up in all these sources, right? It tells me at the bottom which sources I have used in my model, and basically then shows me what the common themes are. It provides me with a summary. As before, if I like this, I can actually add this to my knowledge database, either through a graph layout, so I can click on graph and then it will show me how the different documents actually connect to each other. That doesn't look very impressive because I only have 2 documents in my knowledge database, but let's say you have hundreds, you can then see clusters, right? I can also have a list function here where I have the actual original article on the left-hand side, and then the summary, the interaction, the conversation on the right-hand side. But again, I can do this all within one platform, so I don't need to go and click around different tabs and I have to go to the internet and get lost, or I need to have folders and files. I basically need to upload everything I'm interested in into the knowledge database and then can interact with it in different kinds of ways, right? Now, what is very special about Saner AI, and that's why I introduced that platform, is that actually you can also interact with the internet directly. So you can interact with only your sources, which is what Sky does, but you can also actually go and interact with the internet if you at the very bottom there click at that button that says Sky, and then use another model that they called Ally. I don't know why, but it basically then allows you Ally to interact with the internet directly. Also here, important, every conversation you have is stored as well. So if you don't remember what you asked or when you asked something, you will also find this in your knowledge database, and you can actually share these conversations with fellow students, for instance. So you have a collaborative function as well with Saner AI that is maybe important if you have a group project, right? So that's what Saner AI does with regard to distilling information, right? So let me just show you briefly how to interact with the internet. So you would go down to Ally. This is a platform that was developed by two guys in Vietnam, and in Vietnam very often they like, or in Asia very often they like these emojis, and so maybe that's where that comes from. But if you click on that little pig, basically you will then switch the language model, and so now we no longer use Sky, but we use Ally, which means we can now have a natural language interaction with the internet. And so what can you tell me, this is my prompt, about ADHD and academic performance? Let's say I'm interested in that. And now Ally, the language model, will scan the internet. It will come up with sources that are relevant for that question. But rather than me having to organize these sources and distill these sources, it now provides me with an answer, a summary of what I find in these sources. So NotebookLM doesn't allow that. Saner AI allows me to interact with my own knowledge database, so the so-called grounded large language model, but it also allows me to go beyond that and basically go to the internet and interact with the internet without having to switch platforms, right? So if you're easily distracted, that helps because you don't need to go to Google Chrome and type in your question. You can do everything within a single platform. If I like the answer it gives me, I can save it as a note. I can auto tag it as well. It now gives the tags ADHD and higher education. It gives me the conversation link at the bottom. I save this and add this to my knowledge database. Let's look at how Saner AI allows us to express, and then we're coming to the Q&A. I'll introduce one more platform that goes very quickly. But basically, expressing information and my thoughts, my ideas in Saner AI is also quite easy. I can add my own notes, very much like I can do in NotebookLM. So I have an idea about a workshop on ADHD in higher education, and what do I need to do for that workshop to come together? I need to probably come up with a list of platforms I want to introduce, right? And so I write down that to-do list and save it in my knowledge database. And at any point I'm interested in finding that information, I just go to Saner AI and type in a prompt, pull up that note I made on the ADHD workshop, and then it will do that based on the auto-organizational features like autofill that you can see here, higher education, academic performance, and so on and so forth, right? So you can express your ideas as well in Saner AI. So finally, that's the last platform, and this is probably the least academic platform, but also probably the most visually compelling platform, called MyMind. There's many other platforms like this that have emerged, but this is one I came across recently. And again, it claims it has been developed by people with ADHD, and the tagline is "Remember everything, organize nothing." And so let's again see how you capture. And here it is even easier than in Saner AI. You can again go and basically web clip. You can dump files from your computer directly into the platform and then interact with it. So it also claims that there's no ads, no vanity metrics, so no likes and dislikes. It's just basically a space where you for yourself can accumulate knowledge or anything that you're interested in, and then find it within a couple of seconds. So it has a couple of sections here. I'll come back to this in a second, but let me show you how you can add information, how you can capture information in My Mind. You can basically add your own note, as you can see here. You just basically go to that tile there, add a new note, and start typing. You basically click on that tile and then say, I'm preparing a workshop on ADHD and higher education, and what do I need to do to do that? And so then you just press CTRL, enter, and it saves it automatically in your knowledge database. So you can add yourself information there. That's one way to add information to My Mind. You can see, as you can see here, it has created that note within seconds. You can also go and add articles from the internet, like before, through the web clipping function that we've already seen with Saner AI. You just basically click on the extension for My Mind, the Chrome extension, and pull the entire article into My Mind. It is even smoother than with Saner AI. Saner AI still have some kinks. And then also here, the visualization, the presentation is actually quite beautiful, I find, with My Mind. Again, the same article as you saw before. I'm interested in having this in my knowledge database. I again use the web clipper. I just use the Chrome extension at the top right. I click on that and it pulls the entire article into My Mind within a couple of seconds. And so what is interesting here is that that's not possible with Notebook LM and Saner AI. I can also actually add pictures or videos. So let's say I'm interested in not this article, but I want to use this image here for a presentation on ADHD I will be giving in a couple of weeks as part of a seminar. I just click on the image, I click on Save to My Mind, and it adds that immediately to my knowledge database. Give you another example just to show you that again. As you can see here, I now have my own note. I have 2 articles I have saved. I have this picture there that I have saved. Give you just another example. Let's say I'm interested in this picture as well, this image. I may want to use this maybe for, again, a presentation at some point. I just right-click the image. I save it to My Mind, and it shows up in my knowledge database. Now, to just show you how random this all can be, so far I've always talked about ADHD. Let's just show you again another example. I can also add YouTube videos. So this is Dr. Legrand, who is a physician, who is dyslexic, who has ADHD, who has made a name for himself online for giving tips to students with ADHD. I want to watch this video later on. I just right-click and save it to My Mind, and it will then show up. So we have different types of information. We have notes that I've written myself. We have academic articles. We have images, and we have YouTube videos, all organized in a completely chaotic fashion on My Mind, presented here to you. But also, once you have hundreds of these, you can then simply search through words or language interaction that you're interested in at any given moment, and I will then pull it up. To show you how random that can be, I'm interested in Indonesia. This is a random article from CNN Indonesia. It basically is about how long you can store shrimp in your fridge before they go off. So let's say, it has nothing to do with ADHD. Let's say I'm interested in this article. I just pull it into my database, where I now have things as random and as diverse as images of ADHD articles, articles on shrimp. And let's say I'm interested in clothes as well. I want to buy this T-shirt at some point that I've seen on ASOS. I can put that into My Mind as well. So I basically, again, just right-click, and then basically it will show up on My Mind in a second. So I have articles, I have YouTube videos, I have images, I have articles on shrimps in fridges, I have an image of a t-shirt. It's completely random what is in my knowledge database. And again, as you will see in a second, my mind organizes it for us. So you don't need to organize this in a traditional way to later find information. So you can also capture it actually through your phone. It has a phone capture function. This is a screenshot of my own smartphone. So as you can see, all the information is already there. I have an image in my phone that I want to put up there of a dog and a girl that I find funny. I may want to use this later on for something. So I put that up there, and within a couple of seconds, it is in my knowledge database. So how do I now organize this, or how does it organize it for me? As you can see, if you go to the information that I have now saved here, it basically has done something similar as Saner AI has done. It basically has, with Saner AI, I actually needed to click on a button autofill. Here, it automatically tags the information for me, and it can actually recognize what's in a picture. So as you can see here, it has now tagged that image that I've uploaded from my phone. The tags are dog, child, cartoon, painting, canvas, whimsical, art. That's what it thinks describes that picture. Not actually all that bad. If I want, I can add my own tags to it. And another example here, it gives me a summary of what I see in this picture, an oversized t-shirt from River Island, relaxed fit, and so on and so forth, and has given it tags already, right? Without me having to organize anything whatsoever. And as I mentioned before, it works in any language, not just in English. So that's the Indonesian language article I pulled up before about how to store shrimp in fridges. It gives me a summary of the article in Bahasa Indonesia and has already now tagged that article in Indonesian language tags, right? So that's how it organizes it for you.
Michael, can I just do a quick time check for you? So at 8 o'clock, so I don't know if you want to start moving into. I can't. Yeah, I couldn't quite remember where. Actually, I do have your presentation. I could have checked where you were through it, but I just thought I'd give you the time check. We're still good time-wise because there's time for Q&A afterwards. But I just thought I'd flag it.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm done in about 2 minutes. So.
Wonderful. Well, it's awesome. I'm enjoying it. Over to you.
I can organize this space as well if I want to. Again, it's not necessary, but if I want, I can create so-called spaces, which basically you can see the everything section is where I dumped everything that I'm interested in. I can also create spaces. I created a space clothing or shopping, and I can then add different tiles into these spaces. So if I then go to the space shopping, that one tile will show up, right? This is a form of self-organization or organization that you can engage in if you want to, but it's absolutely not necessary for later finding that information. So when we go now and distill that information, so again, we just put in everything completely random. We did not spend any time on organizing this. If we now interact with our knowledge database, I can type in certain keywords, for instance, dog, and it will then pull up that tile, right? Or I can type in ADHD, and everything that is related to ADHD will show up. I can type in freezer in Indonesian, kulkas, and it will show up as that tile there, right? So completely random storage. And I can pull up the information within seconds without me having to organize this in any form or fashion, right? So that's the way to distill and extract information. As I mentioned before, you can also you have a brief summary of every tile there, and you can also click on same vibe, where it then pulls up tiles with similar kind of information. Now, of course, because I only have 4 images, it just pulls up images, but probably if I would have more images of dogs, it would then put up dog images, right? So I have a summary here of the information as well. I always also have the screenshot of the original article, so I do not need to worry about losing the original source. Even if the internet website disappears, I have the original source here. I can go to distraction-free reading mode and read the article there as well again, after I pull up that article through natural language searches at the top. I can also express ideas, as I mentioned before, just by adding my own notes, right? As you saw before with Saner AI or Notebook LM, I can also add my own thoughts, so to speak, to the platform. I basically just add whatever I want and press CTRL and enter. So let's close and come to an end. You see the note here. I can also actually add tags to that note if I want to myself. It does it automatically, but if I want, I can add my own and also basically then go and express my ideas there. So I don't want to plug any of these platforms. Generative artificial intelligence, as I said, offers limited features. It's very good at identifying information, at summarizing information, at reading the sentiment of information. And then you have different platforms that use these models to basically organize information in a non-traditional way, right? And so other platforms you may want to check out because they're more suited to what you're looking for are listed here. And there's literally dozens of these platforms out there. I've just introduced 3 of them. What I find very important is for yourself, read the privacy policy and the data transferability policy. What you don't want is to now dump your life into these platforms to then realize in a couple of months that the platform went bankrupt, because we're probably in an artificial intelligence boom and bust cycle. So a lot of these platforms will disappear in the next couple of years. You don't want to find yourself locked out of your knowledge because you've dumped everything into a platform. And maybe you actually don't even need to use these platforms in the long term, because actually a lot of the tools that we use in a day-to-day way are now integrating these chaotic storage functions. And this is, again, a short video of my inbox from a couple of days ago, my Gmail inbox. And if you use Gmail, you may have noticed this button, this star on the top right, which is the Gemini language model that Gmail is using. And I can basically now have a natural language interaction with my entire inbox. I have hundreds of thousands of emails in my inbox. I can now say, as it says here, pull up all conversations on the ADHD workshop I have had recently and summarize the conversations in 2 paragraphs, and it will then do exactly that. So I don't need to organize my emails. I basically just rely on the chaotic storage function in combination with generative artificial intelligence to pull up that information. Takes a bit, but it will eventually show up. So this is what I had to say. I apologize. I went 5 minutes over the time I was given. But as you can see here, it now basically has come up with a text of what Gemini found in my inbox with regard to my question, right? So are there any questions? I've not had the time to look at the chat.
Don't worry, I'm on it. And I'm just going to take you off spotlight mode so we can see everyone. So there have been some questions. And certainly send any questions to me. Don't send them to Michael. Probably not to Catherine, because basically it's all going to go via me. I mean, you can. They're not going to get answered if you send them to anyone else. So if you want to put questions in the text, we've got a couple of questions. If you also want to use the raising hand button, so if you press the react button, which looks like a heart, if you actually press it, not the up arrow, but press it, then there's an option for raise hand. And then you can ask your questions directly, come on screen, gives a bit of interactivity. That's all cool. I'm going to say 2 planted questions. I'm planting them myself, for full transparency. I've only thought of them during the thing, because actually I've had the privilege, this is the second time I've seen most of the content. And so we have recorded this. You might find it useful to see it a second time, because I'm understanding it even more than I did the first time. And I know Catherine is also of the same opinion. Everyone understands things differently, but I'm just flagging that watching it for a second time, it's quite an information dense thing, and there's some concepts. So one planted question is, Michael, are all those tools how much do those tools, as I say, I'm planting this one, how much do those tools cost, Michael, that you've been mentioning?
Yes, that's a very good question. So Notebook LM is so-called for free. As long as you have a Gmail account, you basically just log into your Gmail account that they go to Notebook LM and you will get access to that platform. Now, of course, as we know, if something's for free on the internet, very likely you are the product, right? So it, of course, collects data on you as Google does with our inbox. With regard to privacy issues, if you use stuff on Google Drive, then you probably want to use that stuff on Notebook LM as well. If you think it's too sensitive for Google Drive, then I probably wouldn't use it on Notebook LM either. So Notebook LM is for free. And most of these platforms were actually for free as well. When I started to look into them a year ago, most of them have now introduced so-called freemium versions so that the base model is for free. And then if you want to have more tiles, for instance, or more cards or more functions, you then need to pay something, anything from between £5 to £10 a month. Sometimes you get discounts as well. You get student discounts. But unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, most of these platforms have now introduced some sort of pricing system. So the only one I know of that is for free with the qualifier I mentioned is Notebook LM.
Okay, quick other question, and this is definitely based on the second time that I'm looking at it, is you've mentioned that these use LM AI to understand and go through all the information. Does that mean that they can also hallucinate or just come out with things which aren't true, or maybe it says something and when you look more into it, that's not always true?
So, very good question. So all the platforms I introduced, the core language model is a so-called grounded language model. So it only uses the information you upload, right? And as long as you trust that information, let's say I upload 40 articles, academic articles from academic journals that are accepted in the academic community and have a good reputation, and I trust these sources, I upload that material to Notebook LM. It should not hallucinate. It does not hallucinate because it only uses the information that I've given it, right? And so if I were to ask something about tigers or elephants, but all my sources are about ADHD, then it would not be able to answer that question because it's not showing up in my sources. So the bottom line is we drastically reduce the risk of hallucinations if we use grounded large language models, which is the case in all these platforms. However, as you saw with Saner AI, for instance, we also have the possibility to interact with the internet. Iki AI or these other platforms I mentioned at the very end offer some of these functionalities as well. And there very much do we have the risk of hallucinations as well. Yes. So
Cool.
if you interact with your own sources and you trust them, you shouldn't be concerned. If you open up your search, yes, you want to fact check the answers.
Great. Just a bit of housekeeping. We've got about 20 minutes. Definitely no more for questions. I've got quite a few questions coming through. If people don't object, and you can just stay very silent, I'm going to ask people to come off mute and ask questions. And Martin, you are up in one moment, if that's okay with you. And you can scroll up in your message history to see the things. So I'll go through a few of the questions on screen and then a few people that have raised their hands. And oh yeah, there was something else. How long will the recording be available for? Actually, our plan is now to put this on the YouTube ADHD Aware channel. So you'll see that within the next week, probably sooner. That'll be on the ADHD Aware, but Catherine will cover that in the closing. Okay, Martin, do you want to ask your question? If you, Martin B, if you come off mute.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah. Hi, Michael. Thanks. Great talk. Yeah, I was just I'll put it in the chat, but I'll do it to you, talking. So yeah, I use Mendeley a lot as an academic myself. I've got thousands and thousands of sources on Mendeley, and I just wondered if any of those apps, particularly Saner, which looks really good by the way, would be able to import the sources that you've already got, or is it a question like starting from scratch? I'm thinking specifically things like Mendeley.
Yeah, you can absolutely import these. So Zotero or Mendeley, Obsidian as well. So if you use traditional knowledge management platforms, Very often they are in a file format called Markdown. So you just download that and then you upload it to Saner AI. So there was a case study that someone did with Saner AI a couple of weeks ago. They uploaded 100,000 of their notes in a couple of minutes, and then basically had their entire knowledge database available for natural language interaction. So you can absolutely integrate your existing databases into these platforms. Yes.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Okay, so if that answers your question, I'm going to move on to Layla. If you want to come off mute, that's great. If not, I will ask your question for you. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and ask. Oh no. Yeah, no, she hasn't. So anyway, so the next question is, how would you address just a nice easy one. How would you address the privacy and intellectual property concerns using generative AI?
Yeah, so this is a big issue. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I don't want to really talk about this in this workshop, right? But it's, of course, a huge problem, as always, with these kind of tech companies, that they basically use information that has been generated by other people and then use that for their own benefit, right? So that's what we've seen with Facebook. That's what we've seen with Gmail. And now we see it with OpenAI and Meta and all these other companies that now come up with these kind of generative artificial intelligence platforms. But I think ethically it's a huge issue. I don't know if you're aware of that, but Facebook, which runs Llama, which is a large language model, just admitted 2 weeks ago that they have used every single Facebook post going back to 2007 all of us have ever posted. So every picture, every comment, every expression of something on Facebook some of us have put out there since 2007 has been used to train these large language models for Facebook. Nobody has asked us for that, right? All my articles I have ever written, the book I have written has been used to train these models. Huge copyright issues as well. However, I just did not want to talk about it in this format, but personally, yes, I think it's absolutely an issue. Yes, but also, if we want to go there, all of us, or not all of us, but many of us use social media, use Twitter, and there's immediate ethical concerns there as well, right? And so sadly, it's a complex issue. So we use these tools and technologies while at the same time being fully aware that maybe the people and reasons behind it are not in line with our ethical standards.
Nice. Right, I'm going to move over to the next question, if that's okay.
I don't know, Paul, if you see the people that have their hands up. I see.
Oh, you know, I'm literally the next person is Olaf. I'm kind of queuing them as they came in. So I've got like half dozen on the questions on my text, which is there, and I've got people, well, actually up there on my screen. So Olaf, over to you if you would like to come off mute and ask your question, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. Very good talk. Thanks for the talk. My question is, well, as you already mentioned, we can't know if the companies will survive and so on. I have very many papers on my iPad. Is there anything, or have you heard of anything that would sort them into actual folders? Because I'm not ready to move to a complete chaotic storage yet. I like my folders at the moment still. Maybe I will in the future, but an AI that could sort my papers would help me a lot. Is there anything like that, or that also summarizes that maybe?
You mean a tool that creates folders for you and puts the papers into the folders?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, there is a tool out there that does that. Yes, I just did not mention it because it's not really part of the kind of knowledge management system I want to talk about, which is sort of the 4 dimensions, right? And so that's just about organizing. But I'm absolutely yes. So just email me or email Paul and Catherine, and I'm happy to then share that tool. I don't remember the name right now, but yes, there is a tool that allows you to dump your knowledge into it, and then it organizes it into folders. Yes, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the next one's coming in from David, and we will get to Joanna. I'm going to ask a couple more questions down here, and then we'll come over to Joanna. So thank you very much for your patience. David, are you happy to come off mute and ask your question?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Go for it.
Hi. I'm an independent researcher, so I'm not affiliated to a university. So I've got next to no money as well. So interested, Google Books, for example, you quite often only get snippet view, but Google has got the full text, presumably. Does Notebook LM access that in looking for information for you?
So the question is whether Notebook LM uses the entire source, basically the entire book. Yes. So Notebook LM allows you to upload 50 sources per notebook, and each source can be 500,000 words long. So the typical academic book is about 100,000 words. So if you manage to merge 5 books into one source, right? Then you basically meet the 500,000 word limit per source, and then you multiply this by 50, right? So theoretically, you can upload 250 books into one notebook in LM, Notebook LM, and then interact with those 250 books. Do I make sense? So there's a word limit and there's also a source limit. So let's say you have 250 books and each book is 100,000 words. You cannot upload 250 books because there's a 50 source limit, right? But you can merge these books into individual files. So you take 5 books and you merge it into one file. So you have one file and that's 500,000 words long. You then upload that and you do that times 50. And so then you max out the word and source limit you have on Notebook. So it is roughly about 4 million words that you can upload and interact with on Notebook LM per notebook, right? So more than enough to write an academic paper. Usually you have, I never use more than 30, 40 articles per paper. If you write the book, you probably have 60, 70 sources. So you have more than enough capacity in Notebook LM to put in knowledge that you need to write an entire academic book.
So my question was more on being able to access information that Google, for example, when I've bought a Google book, I've only got a limited amount of text that I can copy and paste. So therefore, when I'm trying to edit it and summarize it, I'm struggling to do that. Whereas hopefully Google Notebook LM might be able to enable me to do that.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So but what you can also do, there's all these shadow libraries out there. You may know of like LibGen, for instance, where you can download almost
As long as it's legal, that's fine. Just thought I'd throw this comment out on this recorded edition.
Right. It's sort of legal. So you can download books and then upload them to Notebook LM and interact with them if they're not copyrighted, right? But Notebook, Google Books, you could absolutely upload to Notebook LM and then have summaries created for you. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to move on to Penny and then we've got Joanna after that. So Penny, are you wanting to come off mute and ask your question?
Yes, that's fine.
Oh, lovely. Great.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. That was just so interesting. I really enjoyed it. I am not techie. I was just wondering, with these platforms, is there instructions anywhere? Because I've written as much as I could down, but obviously, you know, for younger folk, it might be more intuitive, but for myself, it probably wouldn't be. Is there any way of accessing instructions?
Yes, absolutely. So if you go to these websites, Saner AI and MyMind as well have actually dedicated pages for people with ADHD, where you can read up on how to use that platform. But I also guarantee you, once you sign up for a platform, it really is very intuitive. Like you watch a YouTube video on how to use it, where it's presented in a much better way than I was able to. Saner AI or MyMind or Notebook LM have also YouTube videos out there how to do something, and within 10 minutes you've mastered these tools. So it's actually, and most of it actually happens on your phone, right? So MyMind, for instance, allows you to capture and distill and interact on your phone. There's another platform, Mem AI, that I mentioned, that also has a very good app. So you can basically do this on your platform, on your smartphone, as you would use WhatsApp, for instance.
Okay, thank you. And just a really quick one, probably more to Paul or Catherine. Do we get sent the slides?
This is slightly for Michael as well. The slide file is absolutely huge because but maybe we can just send, can we, well, this is also for Catherine, can we make the outline of the slides available, or is it only going to be practical just to put it on the YouTube?
Well, when I tried to download the file, I couldn't download it.
Yeah, it's too large.
And we
but can we send out, so the question is, if we can send it out as a PDF to people, if it becomes smaller, can we send it out?
Michael, that.
So what I can do is I can share the slides directly from my cloud through a link, an encrypted link. And so I share entire modules with my students, like 10 weeks of course material. So enormous data files can be downloaded directly from my cloud. So I send you that link, Catherine and Paul, and then you can just send it out to everyone who signed up.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thank you.
I was concerned. I'm a geek, so I'm just going to go. I was concerned that we couldn't send out attachments, but because it's a link, because Michael's thinking kind of intuitively and sensible about these things, we can send out the link and then everyone can get hold of it. It is a 2 gig file, so if you can't download it, you're just going to have to watch it on YouTube. There won't be a workaround for that one. But if your computer can cope with it, great. So Joanna has been so patient. Over to you. Oh, if you want to come off mute as well, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for wondering, taking into account everything we talked about, like the data privacy and I don't know, offered features, cost, and anything else that I'm probably not thinking about right now, which one would be your top pick from all these tools you showed us?
It's a good question. It's hard to say. I mean, in my resource guide that I wrote for my students a couple of weeks ago, at the very end, I say, I'm not going to tell you which platform I would use, but I'm going to give you criteria that you can use to decide for yourself which platform probably makes most sense for you, right? And so how well does it capture information? How well does it distill information? Right now, personally, I would say I would probably use Notebook LM because I have a Google account. It's for free, so to speak. I don't need to pay anything right now. And it is very much geared towards academic work. So it's difficult to integrate stuff from it doesn't have a smartphone app, for instance. I'm not so interested in organizing photos of T-shirts or whatnot in that way, right? And so if it's just about knowledge creation for my articles, I think Notebook LM is right now a fantastic solution. My guess is also if they really develop this, at some point it will probably become integrated with Google Documents. So you can then basically write your article in Google Documents, and whenever you want to use a source for your article, you then just go to the right-hand side of your screen and type in to Notebook LM, pull up that source, and it will do that, right? A bit like Scrivener, if you ever use that program. And so probably if I were an academic and were interested in academic work, I would be using Notebook LM. But if it's mainly about organizing my smartphone or my bookmarks or whatnot, maybe MyMind or Mem AI would be better because it offers a smartphone application. So it depends on what you're looking for, right? But from an academic standpoint, I would probably recommend Notebook LM.
And just a quick one. So based on the one presented.
Yeah, if it is very quick, because we've now no more questions from anyone else, that's for sure. Go ahead, Joanna.
So just based on the ones you showed us, like my mind, for example, are you aware of the privacy? Like, have you researched that? Because you said you were kind of, I don't know, testing it. So
yes, I've read through all of the privacy statements, and the most generous way to talk about it is to say that it's not any worse than WhatsApp or Facebook, right? Which doesn't mean very much, but we've sort of given up our lives to these platforms, and it's pretty much the same with these new platforms as well, right? So if you don't want to see it on Google Drive, or you would not be comfortable uploading it to Google Drive, then you probably also don't want to add it to Notebook LM, right? If you don't want to share a picture on WhatsApp, probably you don't want to use it on My Mind. So that's sort of the rule of thumb that I came up with after I read the privacy statements. I think the bigger issue is one of what you really want to be careful with is whether you can actually get your knowledge transferred out of these platforms. So let's say in 2 years from now, My Mind does not well anymore, or saner or whatnot, and you have hundreds of thousands of notes in there, and you cannot transfer them out, like is the case, with instance, for Evernote, right? People that use Evernote, the traditional note-taking platform, almost went bankrupt a couple of months ago, and it did not offer people a way to actually transfer their knowledge from the platform. That's a huge risk, right? So that would be my main concern. So read not just the privacy statement, but the data transferability statement as well. And so all these platforms I introduced today actually allow you to download all your data easily.
brilliant, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Michael, okay, 2 quick questions. Can we get evil answers? Can we kind of get a yes or no, just because we are now at time, and out of respect for everyone, I should have managed it better, but it means we've got through all the questions. So question 1, do they have a OCR abilities? So that's do they have the ability to kind of scan text which has been scanned itself, so it's like been written and then scanned into the computer?
Yeah, absolutely. So OCR stands for optical character recognition. So what you can actually do with these platforms is you can write a handwritten note, upload it, and it will automatically then transcribe it. So whatever you have, let's say you have a diary that you have handwritten, you could upload a scan. You can literally take a picture with your phone, upload it, and it will transcribe it and tag it within seconds. I have a video of that in my resource guide to show you how that's done. So you can integrate your handwritten material within a couple of seconds into any of these platforms.
Okay, and the last one, a nice easy one. Given the plagiarism policies of universities and also the Turnitin app, etc., would producing notes from these apps potentially fall foul of these?
So that's something we've
nice
had
easy one.
Endless meetings at my university, at least for the last couple of months. And I'm the one, maybe the only one, who actually encourages his students to use generative AI, because once you actually use these tools, you also see the limits and the quality issues as well. And so I can tell you this: if you think these platforms can write an essay for you, it's the garbage in, garbage out principle. If you don't put in brilliant ideas and connect the dots yourself, then the essay that will come out of it at the other end is not going to be very good, right? What these tools allow you is really to organize information in a non-traditional way, and then draw connections that you probably wouldn't before, and then write a brilliant essay based on your own brilliant ideas, right? Can you copy paste material into your essays that is generated by these platforms? Absolutely. Is it going to be detected? Most likely not. Will it be a great essay that gives you a distinction? Most likely not, right? So as I mentioned on the first slide, these tools cannot think. They're essentially sophisticated autocomplete programs. They are not sentient. They are not intelligent in that way, and therefore cannot actually do the work for you. But they can allow you and facilitate the thinking and organization process. for everyone, so to speak.
Cool. This is just a quick announcement for Michael. If any Michaels are listening, do stay on after the webinar once everyone else leaves, just so we can thank you again. Huge thank you from me. I've thoroughly enjoyed, but I'm going to pass over to Catherine, who's got some wrap-up announcements. We'll also thank you again, Michael, because, yeah. But anyway, over to Catherine. Over to my wonderful friend, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much, Paul. I hope that was useful for everybody. I think always useful for more for some than others. That's the way it goes with these webinars. We will obviously be putting this on our YouTube channel, and as Michael said, he will provide you all, we'll email out the link. That will be next week. And thank you ever so much for donating. As you know, all our donations go towards keeping our peer support services free to everybody who needs them and wants to come. And we do have another webinar in November the 21st on Thursday, which is with Karen Doherty, that will be advertised in the October newsletter. And that is about partners, about partnerships, ADHD partnerships, and that will be more information will be coming out on that one in the newsletter next month. Thanks ever so much, everybody, and look forward to seeing lots of you again soon. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.